9/11, bonding in metals. You know, we talked about ionic bonds, covalent bonds, and then there's metallic bonding. The electron C model, we talked about this a little bit. Metals have low ionization energies. And so in a metallic solid, each metal donates one or more electrons to the pool, the electron C. And so we can think of a sodium metal as being a bunch of sodium ions, and the electrons that they lost weren't given away, but they're just kind of floating around them. And then there's this attraction between the sodium ions and those electrons that they sent out to play. And so it's like a neighborhood, and they sent the children out to play, and the neighborhood's cohesive because there's an attraction between the children and the people in the houses. All right. It's kind of lame. But this explains conductivity. Electrons in that C are free to move. This is why metals conduct electricity. Because the electron that maybe started at this atom is free to move. And the guys ahead of it can move, and so they can conduct electric current. It also explains malleability and ductility. Because the attractions between the ions and this sea of electron are not directional, and so they can withstand deformation. So you can deform the metal, and it's not going to shatter like an ionic compound will, where there's a specific directional attraction between the two ions. This pool of electrons, this sea of electrons, is all over, and so if you push the ions out of position a little bit, they're fine with that. And then there's this little bit about the Lewis structure of ozone, which is kind of interesting. Ozone has weaker bonds than oxygen. Oxygen has a double bond. We looked earlier at the resonance forms of ozone, and it's got like a 1.5 bond. So those bonds are weaker than oxygen bonds. And what happens with the ultraviolet light that comes in is that UV light is just strong enough to break the bonds in ozone. It's not strong enough to break the bonds in oxygen. And so what ozone does is it absorbs a lot of the energy from the UV rays that come in. Oxygen can't do that, but ozone can. And so the photon gets absorbed, and then oxygen and the oxygen atom that are formed by that go on to reform the ozone. And so we have this cycle going over and over and over again. And so that's why we need the ozone layer.